everybody? Hope you guys all had a very swell weekend. Had a pretty dang good week here myself. Got quite a bit done. It was definitely one of those big step forward weeks. So let's not waste any time. Let's just get right to it. And I'll see you guys afterwards. So we finally did it. We got there in the end, and we've got a wall back up. Now, for those of you who haven't been watching the channel for the last few weeks, you'll know that this has been quite the struggle because everything behind this was rotten. The original beadboard that was here was rotten. Everything had to be fixed in this area. Everything had to be fixed in all of these areas. So for me to see this finally go back up was amazing. So this is beadboard I got from a local woodworking supply shop here in St. Louis. So if you're in the St. Louis area and looking for somebody to recreate millwork or to just have some off-the-shelf ready stuff like this beadboard, Buckhart's, great place to go. And this is the exact same 5-inch, so each board is about 5 inches wide, tug and groove beadboard that I used when I was working on the bathroom upstairs. So the wainscoting in the bathroom is this exact same beadboard. So I've used this stuff before, and to be honest, I'm quite impressed with it. It comes out really, really nice. And so when I saw how rotten the beadboard was in this room, this was the very, very obvious choice. For comparison, this is the stuff that was here already. And there actually are 2 different profiles here. As I've discussed in the past, I believe this is the original stuff. And I believe this is the stuff added in the 20s. And the only reason I'm led to believe that is this stuff is all over the rest of the house. So I found this in the bathroom upstairs on the 2nd floor, so the only original bathroom in the house, and in the kitchen. And this stuff I find nowhere but specifically this room down here in the basement. So since this is the odd style out, I imagine this is the 1920 stuff and this is the 1890 stuff. And so yes, looking at it at face value, my beadboard is obviously different than those 2 styles over there. But since there are already 2 styles down here, I don't think this is too big of a problem. And it's a lot cheaper to buy off the shelf stuff than it is to go ahead and have stuff manufactured. So a lot cheaper this way, and I think it looks pretty good. Also, for waterproofing reasons, every single one of these boards, as I'm sure you guys saw, had white on the back of it. So that's an oil-based primer, but before the primer itself, I use a product called Wood Life, which is a wood preservative that should help this wood last a whole lot longer than it would have without that product. So fingers crossed, this has a very, very long, lovely life down here in the vet clinic. For anybody curious on how I actually hung this beadboard, I basically just reverse engineered it. So how they had done this originally was they hung, you know, just kind of scrap boards on the masonry wall itself. They used nails. I actually used masonry screws. These are made by a company named Tapcon. I've used them from other projects. They seem to work quite well. So this is actually in the limestone itself. It's screwed in 3 spots. Nice and sturdy. And up at the top as well, although there is a board that runs along the top of the wall here that I used more so I don't have to put as many holes through the masonry itself, because that is a tough job. And at the bottom, I don't know if you guys ever noticed this, but there's actually kind of a trench system around the floor here. So the floor is kind of like a floating floor. It's probably one of the main reasons why there isn't a whole lot of cracking in this floor, because it doesn't actually connect to the structure itself. And these trenches can go quite deep. I've not actually dug all the way till I hit dirt on one of these, but I imagine I'm not far off, because I think here, this is probably 10 inches deep. And these boards actually extend down into that trench about 3 inches. Obviously, I don't want to set the wood directly onto mortar or onto dirt or anything like that, anything that will allow water to come up into the surface. So these are kind of floating in here, but they actually touch this wall, and this wall is pretty much straight. And this is exactly how it was laid out when I pulled the other beadboard out. So I paid pretty close attention to how they did it back then, and then just recreated it here. So when I go ahead and do the baseboard here, that baseboard will essentially just be caulked to the floor right here to create kind of a bathtub effect in this room. Not unlike what's going on here. These are just screwed in there, and then they had them caulked to the floor. Of course, I haven't run any kind of bead of caulk around this because this floor is very, very dirty. And I'm sure it will continue to be very, very dirty until I get enough of this room done to stop making messes in here. So little by little. Now you might have seen that I left a bit of a gap here around the door. Obviously I have to add some sort of trim piece around here. I'm still working out and thinking about what that should look like, as I filled my head with lots and lots of Victorian stylings, which would usually have a rosette. It's a little square block with a little round motif in it, and those would sit either side. But I don't think rosettes are quite perfect for this era. And I already know kind of what the trim I want to be in here, but I don't quite know what I'm gonna do with the corners yet. I might even just 45 them and so have it like you would do like a picture frame. But those of you who know a bit more about the 1920s or even the 19-teens, if you guys have any idea of what that trim would actually look like in that era, leave it in the comments. I would like to know, because it's not a era that I've looked at deeply enough to know what trim around windows and doors would have looked like. And it's not just the door I have to do. We do have the 2 windows as well that I have to handle. And hopefully next week, that's what I start conquering as well, as getting the new trim in here, the new casing, and then I can go ahead and beadboard across this area, and then go ahead and work on all the trimming elements out for this window. Along with the thing that leads me to the next project of the week, which is the glazing for the second sash that belongs to this window. For anybody wondering why I waited to go ahead and glaze the other sash, because I was waiting for this here in the mail. The last few episodes I did talk about this stuff. This is Sarco Type M glazing, or putty, glazing putty. And this is of course what we used last week, which was the DAP 33. And I've heard a lot about this product and really wanted to give it a try. You know, anything that makes a process easier, let's go ahead and, you know, at least check it out. Like I say, these two products are very, very different. This one is much harder, tougher putty. It isn't anywhere near as sticky and isn't anywhere near as spreadable as this Sarco is. And I have the two sashes here. You can see this one back here is the DAP, which is almost dry enough or skinned over enough for me to go ahead and paint. And this is the Sarco here, which is still a bit tacky because it's only been like a day since I've done it. From what I've heard, this stuff will go off within a few days, and this in like a few, well, week or two, depending on, of course, temperature, humidity, all these various different things. But I will have to say, this was a much, much easier product to use. I recommend going with the Sarco. I think it was just a lot easier to use. It is definitely more messy. It is stickier, so it sticks to your hands really, really strong. And so there are definitely some downsides, but overall, definitely Sarco wins the day, at least in my opinion. Check me out, I'm a product review channel now. And this here was the other quick little project of the week, which was the window that's underneath the entryway and the stairs, or what will be the bathroom down at the vet clinic. These two sashes I pulled out, immediately took all the hardware off, stripped them, sanded them, or at least this one sanded, this one stripped, and honestly, these ones aren't so bad. They're not really that rotten. If you remember how rotten some of the other ones are, like that might just be the worst of it there. Now there's holes from staples and silly stuff and, you know, people doing, I don't know, whatever kind of weirdness that they've done to most every piece of wood or hardware in this house. there's definitely that sort of stuff. But to be honest, it's really, really mild. One other interesting thing I noticed about this is they added a little piece at the bottom, so at some point they needed, I guess, a little bit of an extension to it to make it seal properly. So they added this little piece of wood to the bottom of each of the sashes, which I'm definitely going to keep because that helps them fit. And having well-fitting sashes, of course, is a priority of mine. But these are starting to look really great and actually should be glazed, ready to go next week. And so hopefully this window will turn around a lot faster than that window did, because that one took a while because it was really, really, really beat up and extremely rotten. One thing the two windows did have in common though was how terrible the hardware was. The bottom set of hinges on each of these two sashes was so rusted shut that when somebody tried to open the window, it actually pulled the hinge out of the frame. And so the windows at the bottom were actually jutted outwards because the hinge was now on the outside of the frame itself. It was an absolute disaster. So the hinges for this window currently are completely seized and basically rusted shut. But just like that other window, these were the hinges that were again completely rusted and seized, and you can see just how badly pitted they are. So even with as bad as these hinges were and how terrible they were, you can see how freely they move now. So they definitely take quite a bit of work, a lot of rust remover and stuff like that. But I know it is possible to get these hinges to work again. And I don't want to spend all my time trying to find new hinges that are the exact same size. I'm sure it's not that hard to do, but if I can use what was here already, I prefer always to do that. I always prefer to restore and not just go buy new off-the-shelf stuff. Sometimes you can't help that, but every time I can, I prefer to restore. And so the really rusty hinges right now are in this Cool Whip container, which having spare containers around is always, always amazing. Thank you, Grandpa, for sending me lots of containers. But in that murky, murky mess is a few hinges. And yes, I did get my fingers wet with the rust removal solution, but the stuff is non-toxic. It's what's called Evaporust. It does make your fingers stained a little bit though, so, you know, maybe don't reach your hand in there too terribly often, but fantastic stuff. And so those will sit in there for a few days, get them oiled back up, remove all the rust, and we'll be well on our way to having a complete new sash. So that's gonna do it for this episode, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. It was definitely a get at it sort of week, a very much so an earn your rest type of week. So I really did a huge amount of work to the point where I actually couldn't film all of it because my camera only has one battery. And so I kept having to just keep going. So you guys didn't get to see every single part of every process this week, but then again, that would have been like 20 minutes of time lapses. It was a good amount of work, and it's definitely a week I could feel very proud of, and I am very proud of it. I feel like I actually accomplished something this week, and that is an amazing, amazing feeling. Next week, I'm sure will just be a hair lighter than it was this week. I definitely still have the drive and the get up and want to go because things are happening and it's exciting. But it is also, as you guys are watching this, if you're watching it on the Monday it releases, it's actually my 33rd birthday. So I probably will be doing a little bit of family time this week and some other, you know, obligatory birthday celebrations, if you will. Minimal, of course, because I prefer just to really be here and work and stuff, but I do also want to see my family. So I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week. So from Caleb here at the Charles S. Brown House, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye-bye.